Hey guys, I'm about to paint the eyes on the bat, and I thought since it's the same style eyes as the gecko and bearded dragon, I would show you how I paint them, my kind of approach to it. I'm actually going to use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different paints. I've got a light gray, white, black, flat red, and a gory red. It's kind of a deeper, more purpley red. So, the first thing I do, I've got my little palette here. I guess the first thing I would do is paint the inside of the pupils. Make sure all your paints are mixed well. And get some, again, some super fine brushes. So I've got a 000 and a quadruple 0 and a 000. Yeah, pretty fine tips. Alright, so first I'm going to get a fairly healthy dab of black on the tip, and just kind of like the game of operation. Go dip in there. I try and get the paint past the sort of iris, so that what's touching the iris is the part of the brush that doesn't have any paint on it. And then I can kind of a little more comfortably swish this around without worrying about spilling onto areas I don't want to be black. And change angles a lot. Try to get a little more light. Stuff is always easier to do if you have a lot of light. Okay, so now they're black. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is kind of go over the white of the eye with, not white, but a light gray. The reason I do light gray instead of white is it makes the pupil highlight pop more, because I do the white of the eye in light gray, and then the highlight in bright white makes the highlight pop even more. This is airbrush paint, however, so it's thinner, so you kind of have to be careful about it running out. I'm going to put a little bit of retarder medium in it, which the purpose of that is to slow down the drying effect of the paint. It stays wet longer. But a nice side effect for this airbrush paint is that it also thickens it a little bit, makes it make it easier to get it on and not have it run all over the place. All right, so now I've got a little bit of this gray. Whoa. I always kind of start in the center area of the area I'm painting and then work my way out to the edges. And it'll probably take a couple of coats to cover the paint underneath. And I'm always changing my angle to get the best sort of view and angle of attack to like not smash into areas that I don't want to paint. I'm gonna basically go over this. There's this little lip. There's an eye white, and then there's a little bit of a lip where the iris indents. And I go all the way over that lip. I see that as being part of the eye white, because it creates a shadow on the iris that makes the iris look like it has a dark edge without having to paint that dark edge. By the way, your thumb makes a great little palette. This is going to be a tricky spot here. Okay. And it's better to do light coats that aren't maybe covering it well than with a little bit of paint, than to go too thick with the paint and then be kind of stuck with a big glob. This is going to be tricky here because it goes underneath the brow skin. So I'm gonna err on the side of the iris. It's fine though too, because we're going to cover the iris with other paint. So if you spill on that side, it's better than spilling onto the eyelid side. Spill over, I should say. Okay, so I'm going to call that a good first pass and work on the other one while that one dries. So just kind of got a big glob that I put in the middle, and then I'm going to push it out to the edges. You can see I'm like bracing my hand all over the place on this thing so that it's steadier and so that I can use this natural movement of my hand along the edge of what I'm trying to paint. I'm a little far here, let me see. Is that better? Yeah. Just make sure you're not touching the other eye while you're painting one. Stay conscious of what's actually still wet on the paint, on the model. And now this part again. Okay. Looks pretty good. So I'm just going to do a little second coat. This is getting a little thick, so I might just, for the second coat, I might just do the straight up airbrush paint without the thickening stuff, just to get a more even wash over the top of this. I don't know if you can see that. And I'm not worrying as much about the edge, or I'm not worrying as much about going to the edge because it's got pretty good coverage. Just want to even out the white. Looks pretty good. This side's getting a bit thick, so hopefully it sort of levels itself as it dries. It's a little gloppy. Okay, now that I have the white done, I'm going to start with the irises, and I decided to do this guy in red. Seemed like a good contrast color. I'm going to start with this gory red. It's a deeper, like purplish red. And my goal with the iris is to stay under the lip of that, like I was saying, where it's dished out. So I don't want to sort of go over the top. That little line isn't of the white to the iris is a great delineator to help you know where to stop, and helps kind of keep the paint in there as well. I'm doing two reds because I'm going to do darker red first and then a lighter red to kind of bring out a little like highlighting, counter highlighting to the main highlight. Most important thing is to try not to rush it, because that's when mistakes happen. I'm not worried about touching the red onto the little highlight bump just yet. It'll get covered, so I'm more concerned about not touching the eye white. Okay. I'll say that looks pretty good. And let that dry for a minute. And a little bump of white here I want to kind of smooth out. There. The layer lines can sometimes make this a little more difficult. There we go. I don't know if you can see, but having that iris be the part that's, you know, indented from the white, it really helps to add a little bit more depth to the iris. It's maybe not as easy to see on the video as it is in person, but alright, let's let that dry a little bit. This stuff dries pretty quick, so usually don't have to wait too long. Alright, so I'm going to be a little bit careful because I'm not sure exactly how this is going to work out. I'm going to kind of do some tests. But for these sort of highlight areas, what I do is I go opposite. So our main highlight is going to be at the top. So our secondary will be a broader highlight on the bottom. So imagine the light coming down in this way. It's hitting its speck right on the little white dot, and then it's kind of diffusing and catching along the inside of the lower part of the iris. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I'm gonna go very soft and just kind of be more focused opposite, like in the middle of where I want the highlight to be, and then kind of try and feather it out. I want it to be a fairly subtle effect. Generally speaking. So I don't know if you can really see. Yeah, it just kind of like, so gives again a little bit more depth. Do the other side. And I'm not going right up to the edge with this. I want the outer edge of, I'm basically trying to do it more in the middle of the iris, because I want the outer edge to be a little bit in shadow. So I'm trying to do it basically inside the middle of the red, of the darker red. Cool. Might do a touch more on this side. If you get too much, you know, you can always go back with your darker red, sort of feather it back the opposite way, just to, and I say red, but it's really any color that you choose to do the paint job with. You just try and find a lighter shade or add a little white to the base color you're using to get a highlight. I just happen to like how these two reds play off each other. So that looks pretty cool, and it kind of gives it a little bit metallic-y look, maybe. And then the last part, which is my favorite, and usually the easiest. Grab a little bit of pure white and dab it on the brush, and we just cover this highlight. Try and make it, you know, as round and as fluffy of a paint job as you can. You know, I use a bigger glob and I just kind of push it on and let it pool up on the top of that thing, but you know, push it around a little so it's even and hopefully round. And there's the eyes. Okay, so I think those look pretty good. The only thing I might do now after I'm done with the rest of the model, I'm going to wait a little bit till I'm finished, is go over the eyes with some gloss varnish. It goes on kind of milky but dries clear and glossy, and it'll give the eyes a nice kind of wet look and also protect the paint. But first I'm going to finish painting, and then I'm going to do probably a matte varnish over the whole thing to protect it, and then the gloss varnish on the eyes and maybe the teeth, just to give them a little bit of wetness. So yeah, that's it. Hopefully that was helpful, and enjoy painting.